Hello ladies and gentlemen, queens and kings, lads and lasses, boys and girls, to another video. Today, in the spirit of Halloween, we're going to be talking about horror films. Horror films incite some of our greatest fears through blood, violence, death, but most importantly, great storytelling. With that being said, let's talk about the fundamentals of horror films. Some of the fundamentals of horror films are characters that have deformities, whether they be spiritual, physical, or psychological. They are also built on shock and suspense, or the anxiety of being able to see or not being able to see the horror. One of the first horror films that was ever made was called Manoir du Diable, and it was directed by Geoffrey Nowell-Smith in 1896. In the early years of horror cinema, these films were about monstrous creatures. These monsters were influenced by European folklore, which included zombies, werewolves, and vampires. This led to movies like Nosferatu by F.W. Murnau, made in 1922, and Frankenstein, directed by James Whale in 1931. We talked about the fundamentals of horror, but there are also three different categories of horror. There is unnatural, psychological, and massacre, also known as slasher films. Unnatural horror is basically what was made in the earlier days of horror cinema. Basically, those films were based around monsters. The underlying theme of unnatural horror is that monsters can come into society, or we can be the monsters ourselves. A great example of this is in the movie Blob, where the monster terrorizes a town and sucks the blood out of its victims. These types of films can make us feel sympathetic towards the monsters themselves, like in the movie Frankenstein. That brings us to psychological horror. Psychological horror is basically suspicion, distrust, self-doubt, and paranoia about oneself or others, according to filminquiry.com. Alfred Hitchcock is one of the first directors to make a psychological horror film, and that film was called Psycho, and it was made in 1960. Psychological horror eventually gave rise to massacre movies, also known as slasher movies. Slasher movies tend to rely more on surprise and suspense than the unnatural and psychological horror categories. Some of the first massacre movies that were ever made were Bay of Blood in 1971, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, and the infamous Halloween, made in 1978. Thank you ladies and gentlemen for watching. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. If you're new to my videos, feel free to subscribe as well. And let me know what your favorite horror film is in the comment section below. Until next time, eat, sleep, and dream films. I'll catch you guys later.